Putin thought he was untouchable. When he launched his so-called special military operation, he knew with absolute certainty that Ukraine wouldn't be able to strike back. Even after the initial invasion failed, it wouldn't matter to Putin. Ukraine didn't have long-range weapons. The conflict would be contained on the territory of the nation Russia invaded, and that would be that. Oh, how times have changed. The untouchable leader is now well within reach, and with a single drone, Ukraine has just shown Putin that he can be struck at any time. We take you to Gelendzhik in the Krasnodar region. This stunning estate, which overlooks the Black Sea and has cost Putin well over $1 billion to transform into a luxury palace he can use whenever he wants to take a break, is supposed to be untouchable. Known to the world as Putin's palace, this sprawling estate has everything that an insane despot could ever need. In the past, this palace has been filled with the most opulent furniture that you could imagine, much of it gifted to Putin by the oligarchs that he has made rich since he came to power. At one point, around 1,500 people worked on the construction and renovation of this lavish building. It had a Japanese garden, a floor-level pool, and a massive gym constructed almost entirely of marble. Sure, it was basically made of plasterboard, and in later years some of it got covered in a nasty green mold. But if anything, that just proves that Gelendzhik truly was Putin's palace, impressive on the outside, but rotting at the core. This palace was a monument to the increasingly insulated world that Putin has created for himself. A mansion away from home, heavily protected and far removed from the average Russian. This is where Putin went to relax, firmly of the belief that nobody could touch him when he was within the palace walls. Then, everything changed. On August 3rd, the news broke that a Ukrainian drone had fallen mere kilometers away from Putin's palace. Ukraine hadn't scored a direct hit. It isn't even known if the palace was the target. It's unlikely that it was, as the drone that crash-landed was reportedly shot down just 300 meters shy of a facility that has been linked to Russian missile production. That seems the more likely target. But for Putin, that facility, along with the 6 people killed and the 40 who were wounded when Russia made the insane decision to shoot down Ukraine's drone over a populated beach, don't matter. What matters to Putin is that this single drone could have killed him. It was brought down a mere 24 kilometers away from Gelendzhik, showing Putin once and for all that even the most heavily protected corners of the Russia that he has created for himself now lie within Ukraine's reach. Ukraine may not have been targeting the palace, but it could have been, it can, at any time. The war that Putin started is now closer to him than it ever was before. What Putin thought would be an invasion that would offer no blowback to the Russian people has transformed into a full-blown war that threatens everybody in Russia. The political elite, with Putin at the head of the beast, thought that it was safe behind an invisible wall created by Ukraine's inability to strike them at their homes. That wall has come tumbling down, and Putin has heard the message loud and clear. There is nowhere left for him to hide in Russia where Ukraine can't reach him. As the Kyiv Post reports, one Russian commenter is claiming, "There is no longer a single battlefield, and there is no longer a rear area where one can simply hide. There is nowhere to hide in Russia." That commentator is right. Though it was just one drone that caused the panic at Gelendzhik, and you're soon going to discover how Russia reacted, the reality is that Ukraine has built up a stockpile of what it often calls long-range sanctions that could potentially strike Putin almost anywhere other than Russia's freezing cold and isolated Far East. And even that region may not be safe for much longer. On June 21st, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky revealed that Ukraine has drones that can now travel up to 3,000 kilometers, as he vowed that Ukraine would now carry out daily strikes against Russia in the occupied territories. We didn't have to wait long for Ukraine to prove these range claims. On July 7th, the news broke that Ukraine had carried out a strike against the Omsk oil refinery in Siberia, causing a huge fire. Any doubt that Putin might have had about Ukraine's claims was dispelled in an instant. This was a record-breaking strike when it came to distance, as Omsk is around 2,500 kilometers away from Ukrainian-held territory. Zelensky made a promise, Ukraine's drone operators delivered. That should make Putin very worried, as Zelensky has made another promise. On July 24th, in the wake of the Omsk strike and just ahead of the single drone that has caused Russia to panic in Gelendzhik, Zelensky said that Ukraine is working on new drone technology as we speak. That technology will soon give Ukraine's drones the ability to fly up to 5,000 kilometers. And this new generation of long-range sanctions isn't some far-off concept. Drones exceeding 4,000 kilometers are expected to be in the hands of Ukrainian operators by the end of 2026, and those exceeding 5,000 kilometers by the end of 2027. Ukraine isn't going to rest on those laurels either. It's working on drones that can travel up to 10,000 kilometers, which will practically put every part of Russia that matters within reach. Those drones won't be arriving in 2026. Russia will have to wait until 2027 to start dealing with Ukrainian weapons flying deeper into its territory than anybody ever believed that they could. And that's the point of Omsk, of Gelendzhik, and of every drone that Ukraine sends into Russia. All of them break the contract that Putin put in place when he launched his so-called special military operation. Putin sold his people a very specific bill of goods when he invaded Ukraine in February 2022. They would not be touched. None of Russia would be. The bargain was simple. Support Putin in the special military operation and those Russians would be repaid with the reuniting of Russia and Ukraine, along with all of the prosperity that a nation with an estimated $15 trillion in mineral wealth promises. 4.5 years after selling that bill, Russia should be asking for a refund. Missiles and drones flying into Russian territory every day. There are blackouts, water shortages, the scent of burning oil in the air, and so much more, all of which Putin promised would never be a problem. The drone crashing at Gelendzhik is just another example that the contract has been broken. Only it's an example that makes Putin look even weaker than he did before. It's not just the Russians in far-flung regions that have minimal defenses that have to worry. Every Russian should be scared, because there is no such thing as a safe rear in the country anymore. Safe Moscow is no more, blared the headline of a June 18th Euromaidan press report, which came in the wake of Ukraine carrying out its second strike in 3 days against the Moscow oil refinery that is just a stone's throw away from the Kremlin. Ukraine has been striking Russia's central nervous system throughout 2026, the Center for European Policy Analysis argued on July 15th. Power plants, refineries, infrastructure, military bases, and heating systems are all targets of long-range weapons that have reshaped the war and forced Russia to constantly re-evaluate its military calculus. Russia's 2026 reality is so far removed from Putin's 2022 promises that it may as well be in another dimension. And as for Gelendzhik, whatever aura may have once surrounded Putin's crumbling palace is officially gone. The single drone that reached Russia's Black Sea corridor on August 3rd isn't the first to have placed Putin's palace under threat. August 2025 saw debris from a downed Ukrainian drone spark a forest fire just 10 kilometers away from the palace, again showcasing that Ukraine's drones could hit the massive building if Ukraine really wanted them to. Another fire was reported near Gelendzhik in early 2026, again the result of a drone being downed. So far, Russia's air defenses around Putin's palace have held up, but we should have expected them to. Ukraine hasn't unleashed a full-blown swarm against the palace. Every drone that Russia has shot down has been an isolated unmanned aerial vehicle that was likely on its way toward a different target. But Gelendzhik could easily have been that target. It may yet be in the future. And when it does become a target, it will be interesting to see how the palace's defenses hold up when faced with dozens, maybe even hundreds of drones rather than the occasional one. There's one thing we can say for certain about what just happened near Putin's palace: Russia is panicking. We can see that from the response to the attack. That panic is real, and it should be. It's also tinged with hypocrisy, and it provides us with some insight into Putin's manipulative media tactics, as well as the fear he now lives with every single day. But before we go deeper into that, this is a reminder that you're watching The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to hit the button and enable notifications so you never miss a video. Russia's response to what happened in Gelendzhik was exactly what you would expect after hearing that civilians had been casualties of Ukraine's drone. An opportunity to cast Ukraine as the bad guy appeared. Russia's foreign ministry seized that opportunity with both hands. Ukraine had resorted to international terrorist activities, blared spokeswoman Maria Zakharova. A terrorist gang had seized control over the Ukrainian state, and the West was complicit in supporting this terrorism. There's a reason why the word terrorist is repeated so often. Russia wants to drill this narrative into its people's heads because casting Ukraine as a terroristic nation that attacks civilians feeds into Putin's justifications for his invasion. Russia had to launch the special military operation. It had to stay in Ukraine, even after it became clear that the initial invasion had failed. These Ukrainians are trying to kill all Russians, and it's only brave Putin and the Russian military that can save you. The hypocrisy is on another level. And the reality of what happened at Gelendzhik is very different. You'll have already picked up on that if you remember what we told you earlier. Ukraine clearly had a military target in mind. A facility that serves Russia's missile pipeline was just meters away from where Ukraine's drone crashed to Earth. As for the drone, it was shot down by Russian air defenses. And as for that decision to fire, Andriy Kovalenko, who heads Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation, had some choice words to deliver to Russia. This was the work of Russian air defense forces, which shot the drone down over a beach full of vacationers, and pathetic efforts by the Russian authorities, who often conceal air raid alerts or fail to do everything necessary to ensure Russian safety during such alerts, Kovalenko declared, noting that Russia made the conscious decision to shoot Ukraine's drone down over a populated beach, and that Ukraine only attacks targets that are part of Russia's military-industrial complex or otherwise help Putin to fund his war. A CNN analysis of the video of Ukraine's drone crashing down reveals that automatic gunfire from at least 3 weapons can be heard moments before the drone lands. Ukraine's drone then veers and dive bombs into the beach as control over its trajectory is lost. Russia did this to itself, but it claims terrorism. Let's focus on the hypocrisy of that for a moment. Russia says that Ukraine is a terrorist state because Russia shot down a Ukrainian drone over a populated beach. At best, this is a Russian accident that is being used to disparage Ukraine. At worst, Russia purposefully shot down this drone, offering no warning of what was incoming, so that it could cause casualties that it could pin on Ukraine. Either way, Ukraine didn't intend those casualties. That's something we can't say about Russia and its long-range attacks against Ukraine. According to the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Russia has killed 16,431 Ukrainian civilians between February 24, 2022 and June 30, 2026. Another 48,613 civilians have been injured, many of them by Russia's missiles and drones. In fact, just days before what happened at Gelendzhik, Russia launched a ballistic missile strike against Kyiv that killed 9 and injured dozens more. This is the difference between Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine aims for military targets, with civilian deaths being accidents. Russia targets civilians, purposefully. It's been doing it since the beginning of the invasion, and it will continue to do it because Putin believes that inspiring fear in the hearts of Ukraine's civilians could lead them to turn against Zelensky and accept Russia. When Zakharova claims terrorism for what happened near Putin's palace, the words ring hollower than Kevin Bacon in a schlocky 2000s sci-fi flick. You simply can't take Russia seriously when it's purposefully committing travesties that it doesn't even attempt to justify. Putin is a war criminal. That much is clear. But what just happened at Gelendzhik also shows us that a man who once thought himself untouchable could now be hit at any time, and that will make Putin very scared. A criminal constantly on the run, unable to move freely on his own land because he knows that one day Ukrainian drone operators might actually target him. There's another reason why Russia has been so quick to launch its latest round of condemning Ukraine for an incident that wasn't Ukraine's fault. It's not just about claiming Ukraine to be a terrorist nation. Putin is using what happened at Gelendzhik as propaganda, as he attempts to convince the world that Ukraine is actively trying to assassinate him while he is the sitting president of Russia. We know this because Putin has a history when it comes to this sort of thing. Toward the end of 2025, Russia claimed that Ukraine had launched a drone attack against Putin's residence in the northern Novgorod region. Russia went all in on this claim. It even released footage purportedly showing Ukrainian drones that had been shot down on the ground somewhere outside the residence. In total, Russia said, Ukraine had unleashed 91 long-range drones against Putin's home. Only 1 or 2 were shot down in the footage, and there was no video of the drones being shot down. The conspiratorially minded might have instantly assumed that Russia had planted Ukrainian drone debris from other strikes at Novgorod to make it look like Ukraine had tried to kill Putin. The conspiracy theorists would have been right. That's exactly what Russia seems to have done. Ukraine instantly denied Russia's claims, and on January 5th, about a week or so after the attack, a US investigation into the supposed strike revealed that no Ukrainian attack had actually taken place at Novgorod. President Donald Trump, who initially described himself as very angry about the attack, said, "I don't believe that strike happened. We don't believe that happened, now that we've been able to check." Why does all of this matter? When Russia made its claim, it was in the midst of peace talks at the time. After the alleged attack, Russia said that it wouldn't be able to continue those talks. This was all purposeful, as Putin tried to play on his very real fear of Ukrainian drones to manipulate the US into siding with Russia. It didn't work. But now Russia has an attack that is confirmed to have happened near Gelendzhik. Putin's patsies haven't made the link between that attack and an attempt on Putin's life yet. But the strike and Russia's condemnation come right as rumors swirl that the US and Ukraine are working on a plan for an air ceasefire that may soon find its way onto Putin's desk. It wouldn't surprise us if Putin tries to use the Gelendzhik incident to refuse that plan, should it become tangible. Only this time the worry will be real. Ukraine's drone did get close to Putin's palace. Putin may try to twist all of this, but his response will be terror. This is a man who already lives in fear of attack, be it from Ukraine's drones or members of his own inner circle. It's been well documented since at least May that Putin now spends most of his time hiding away in underground bunkers, only emerging when he is called upon to make one of his increasingly rare public appearances. Forbes says that Ukraine's drones have inspired this bunker dwelling, as Putin is actively avoiding the lavish properties he once called home. The Independent says that at least one of those bunkers is in the Krasnodar region, which happens to be where Putin's palace is located. It's almost as though Putin is trying to stay as close as he can to the life that he once knew, though he knows that he won't live it again for as long as the Ukraine war drags on. That fear is the point of all of this for Ukraine. It may not have been actively targeting Putin's palace on August 3rd, but Ukraine won't mind that one of its drones came so close to it. Now that drone can serve as another example to the Russian people that their strongman leader is not what he claims to be. Another promise broken, just like the special military operation contract. Putin is supposed to be the great protector of Russia, the man who stands up for his nation and defends it at all costs. That's the narrative that he has spun around himself for more than 2 decades, and it's all come crashing down. Putin isn't a strongman. He's a man who spends his life in bunkers, cancels military parades, and restricts discourse in his own country to prop up his image. The armor that Putin wears has been battered over the last 4.5 years. Now, just one drone in Gelendzhik has put yet another massive dent into that armor. Everybody in Russia knows it now. Putin could be a target for Ukraine whenever Ukraine wants him to be. And if he isn't, Ukraine can strike at the entire fabric of Russian society, all because Putin has twisted every aspect of that society to serve his obsession with Ukraine. That's what we've seen with Ukraine's Wildberries strikes. On the surface, Wildberries is a civilian enterprise. In reality, it isn't. Far from it. It's as legitimate a military target as any, and Ukraine's strikes against the company are yet another example of Ukraine bringing Putin's war back home to roost. Find out more by watching our video. And if you enjoyed this video, we have plenty more coming up at the Military Show. Subscribe and enable notifications to ensure you're among the first to see what we have coming next. And thank you for watching.